Hello and welcome to the 75th episode of Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad, and I am joined by a man who never looks back at an explosion, my brother Rob.
It burns the backside.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you today?
Good. I just wanted to quickly mention this Cool Guys Don't Look at Explosions video that Andy Samberg did. Did you see that?
I have not. I missed the MTV Movie Awards. It kind of wasn't on my high list of things to watch, even though I love Andy Samberg.
It was a very obvious reveal of the audience of MTV because Twilight won Best Picture. And we won't go near that. But Andy Samberg perfectly skewered this cliche where in action movies, when the guy walks out of the explosion, he never looks back. You know? And they just had endless cuts of all these different movies. It made me think of another cliche that I've always seen, but I've never heard it called out. So I want to take this chance to publicly call out not a guy movie cliche, but a girl movie cliche.
Aha.
And that is, I think you know where I'm going with this.
I do indeed. If you ever want to figure out how girly a chick flick is, count the number of times in the trailer that a girl falls randomly for no explained reason.
Yes. It needs to stop just as much as this explosion crap. It's like every romantic comedy, every miscongeniality, every trailer, watch and see if I'm wrong. The girl falls down at some point. And I asked Amber about this. I'm like, what is the deal with this? And she said, well, you got to understand for a girl, that's like one of the most embarrassing things is falling in public. So I'm like, well, I guess. They must have market tested this.
It is worth studying, but it's just so lame because miscongeniality is definitely the main offender, I think, that brought this to our attention. Because she falls 3 or 4 times in that, and there is no explanation for any of it. She's just like, I'm going to walk away. Whoops, I fall.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for that. It's a public warning.
Exactly. And speaking of films and film trends, you and I both saw Up this week.
Yeah.
And that was going to be our main topic of discussion, and we will give our quick impressions here of the movie, but this week is mostly going to be dedicated to E3 and the news that came out of that. I don't think we're going to do a nostalgia section. We're just going to plaster this whole show with news because there's so much that came out. Really excited to get to that. But real quick, let's give our thoughts on Up. What did you think?
I thought it was good. Maybe not as amazing as Wall-E was, and seems to lack as much depth as some of the films, but it's still Pixar living dangerously, having a old man as your main character. And addressing kind of the issue of dreams, like lifelong dreams and age, and it's odd because it's almost not a kid's movie in that regard.
I thought that too. I'm glad you said that because you see his wife and him grow old, and it touched me as a recently married person. I'm like, these are things I think about, but I had to snap out of it and be like, how many kids are enjoying this montage here?
Right, because the moral of the story that you take with you is it's never too late to live your dream.
Yeah, to me, this kind of felt like a short film concept, which, by the way, the short that they play before this was almost better than the movie.
Great short, yeah.
But this felt like a short concept of a guy, who flies in his house and stuff that is sort of expanded out into a movie. And so while I agree with you, it's definitely not a bad movie. Pixar's still better than any other CG movie you can see. When you compare to their other movies, I don't think this comes out as strongly. On their own, there's a lot of cool things, and I saw it in 3D, and the effect, especially toward the end, there was a lot of just, whoa, really cool stuff.
I sat at an angle off to the side of the screen.
Right.
But even at that angle, there was stuff that was really just subtle, like fabric or things like that.
Yeah.
That was still all fully 3D and had texture to it.
I found that during motion scenes it was a little blurry, but overall the effect has come a long way.
He had a moment where he had reflection in his glasses.
Right.
And that, the reflection, how it was set in his glasses, made sense, in the real world.
Yeah, so not quite on the level of some of their previous work. I'd probably put this around Cars level, somewhere around there, but you could do a heck of a lot worse.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's move on now to our main topic of discussion, which is going to be the big news item I mentioned, E3. The Electronic Entertainment Expo, basically the geek equivalent of Woodstock, at least the video game equivalent. All of the big video game manufacturers come, and in a typical week of news, you might get a game announcement here or there, but at E3, the deluge just falls. And I'll let you kind of guide this here. Let's just go through the three companies and kind of go through some of our favorite games that were announced, and then we'll get to the hardware after that.
Yeah, sure. First of all, at Microsoft conference, they opened it up with Beatles Rock Band.
They did. Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr.
And the rest of the Apple Corps estate, like Yoko Ono, Lennon was there.
Yeah, George Harrison's wife and everything.
George Harrison's wife, George Harrison's son.
Pretty star-studded, actually. Microsoft had Spielberg as well.
Yeah, they showed that they have a budget, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I know you Twittered a little bit about this, and Amber thought it was exciting, too, the microphone situation.
Did I Twitter about that?
The three...
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought you meant like how the microphones were cutting in and out while people were talking.
No, but we can get to that, too. There's a lot of awkward moments worth mentioning.
There is that, too. Yeah, they have 3-part harmony now. They all share the same space on the top bar, which also suggests that they may share the same score and things like that, so it's not as strict. But it's the Beatles. You get 3 microphones together. And that was just blew my mind because even today, Rock Band and Guitar Hero don't have 2-part harmony.
Right.
So to go full out 3-part,
I know.
That was exciting to see.
Yeah, I guess they're going to need a new hub for this because the current hub is basically all filled. If you have a band, so they're going to probably have to have like a Beatles hub that has like 8 ports. But you can daisy chain like 128 devices on a USB, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Probably even more.
So you're looking forward to that. I thought the trailer for that was so stylish and so cool. The one that ended with them riding on these CG elephants. Did you see that?
Yeah, that's actually the opening sequence for the game.
Oh, dude, I can't wait to watch that in HD. It's so nice.
Yeah, they ride on the thing. They're doing I Am the Walrus and stuff like that. And the way the game looks, it's just so professional. It's so not Guitar Hero, Metallica, or Aerosmith. Like it is.
Think we're
really,
getting paid by Harmonix at this point?
I know, but they've modeled these guys in each individual era of the development of the Beatles. So there's not just one band. They have a whole slew. Like you can tell this is as big a project, if not maybe bigger than the previous Rock Band 1 and 2 game.
Only thing I'm still not sure about is the song selection, and the songs in the trailer, while great, are not all of my favorites. So looking forward to seeing more of the playlist.
Yeah, but they did announce that they will be releasing downloadable content, which means full albums. The first one being Revolver, I want to say.
Oh, famous. Yeah.
So eventually you can count on maybe the whole catalog.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
I want to mention Alan Wake, which was, if people remember, one of my most anticipated games of 2009, and that was with fingers crossed, because this is one of those games like Huxley we always joke about, and then after Duke Nukem was canceled, I was like, oh god, now Alan Wake has no chance. But surprisingly, Alan Wake lives. In fact, the exact quote from the guy was, Alan Wake will see the light of day in spring 2010. And they not only showed a CG cinema for this, but they also did a gameplay demo, and there was a lot of Alan walking through very creepy woods, flashlight casting an obvious beam of light, where he pointed it, and then some supernatural type stuff, things being lifted into the air and some action sequences. I thought this looked good. I definitely thought that the Max Payne team being behind it was showing through in sort of the texture of the world and the creepiness factor. But if this is, as smart as it looks, like story-wise, that's going to be really where it counts.
Yeah, definitely. One of the next great games that they showed at the Microsoft conference was, to me, a big surprise. A brand new game from Epic called Shadow Complex. I believe it's going to be an arcade release.
Right, it is.
But it is a 2.5D side-scroller.
Yeah, now explain what you mean by 2.5, because when you hear that, you think, it's like a 3/4 perspective.
Right, it's a 3D game, but in general, you're moving left to right or up and down.
Right.
But what was cool about this game was that it is a return to the old kind of Metroid and Castlevania style exploration game.
Right.
Where it's two-dimensional, but you have this huge map, and you're going to retrace places, then go back, and you're going to get these upgrades that are going to unlock previously unexplorable areas. And this game, however, the style isn't that kind of fantasy.
No.
It's war,
like
it's
Contra almost.
Exactly. And I thought it was pretty neat how you have environmental interaction.
Yes, they show him like shoot down a pipe or something or an electrical cable and
zap some guys. My girlfriend really liked that too.
just that specifically.
Well, yeah, like it shows creativity, and that's what's exciting.
Yeah, and we mentioned awkward moments. I think this is definitely one of the more famous was the total microphone failure of Cliff Bleszinski, his assistant that was running this game. So it ended up being like the least climactic, reveal of the title because you had these guys sitting there and they were like, and then all of a sudden Cliff Bleszinski blurts out like Shadow Complex, and it was like Ridge Racer, yeah.
And then the guy continues to shout as he's playing the game, like.
Yeah, so that's Shadow Complex. Let's see. Of course, we have to mention that Metal Gear is coming to the Xbox. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
Again, another awkward moment, though, when Kojima appeared behind the Microsoft guy and tapped him on the shoulder, and they sort of like played too late, like the sound effect of the boing from Metal Gear, and then Kojima walks forward, and the guy's like, "I want to introduce the man from Metal Grill Solid," and then Kojima starts speaking, and then the guy claps loudly in his own mic and goes, "Woo, yeah!" like over the crowd, so you couldn't hear anything except the guy. It was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But he announced Metal Gear Solid Rising, which has a picture of Raiden, and apparently you're going to play as Raiden, which would be like 2, which is the last one I played. Yeah. So a completely new Metal Gear experience, quote unquote. We will see. Again, at this point, I'm getting kind of tired of Metal Gear, and I haven't even played it in years. So
yeah, and Kojima has gone insane with like, he's working on 4 or 5 projects now.
I just feel bad for him,
Yeah, well, don't get me wrong, like he's pulling his quota here, but
yeah,
I guess like man, I don't know, the economy or something.
Yeah.
Like he actually can't retire. But
I don't know.
It was kind of cool to find that out. Also, that it was announced that he was going to be working on the next iteration of Castlevania.
Oh, weird! I didn't hear that. Wow, cool.
Yeah, I was mentioning like to you earlier, like before the show, how like this is sort of like 2D platforming exploration is
right.
somehow like making this comeback.
So that was the Kojima stuff. You also got late news after the conference about Secret of Monkey Island, and you twittered about that.
Right, Secret of Monkey Island is coming to Xbox Live and to PC. It's a remake, but I remember just hearing so many people buzzing about the desire to get Secret of Monkey Island somehow in some format, because it's long since passed, and emulation isn't even doing it justice these days. So
yeah, for those who don't know, it's an old LucasArts adventure game, way old school graphics, hand animated, but they are actually redoing the graphics, which I was shocked.
Yeah.
When they announced that, because who treats an old game like this with that much care?
Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning there was a Heavy Rain showing, and excited that some legitimate adventure games are making a comeback here.
Yeah, so let's move to Nintendo's gaming, or maybe lack thereof. I don't know. let's talk about Nintendo's software lineup.
Well, probably the biggest thing software-wise was there were 2 Mario game announcements.
Right.
There was New Super Mario Brothers Wii, which I think is kind of a terrible name.
Kind of, yeah.
Because it gives you the impression that it's New Super Mario Brothers from the DS ported over to the Wii.
Right.
When it's not. It's a sequel. It's a brand new game.
It's 4-player.
4 players on screen at the same time. Again, awkward moment, like she said Shigeru Miyamoto had been working on this idea for 15 years. And
yeah, it was a real weird tease. She said like the number 4 is very important, and I thought, dear God, he's gonna go 4D or something. Like, what's gonna happen?
No, like time is gonna be a fact. We're gonna travel back in time or something. No, it's a 4-player game.
It's a 4-player game. This is cooperative though. It's kind of cool. Everybody's sort of able to grab and throw each other and things. And
it's the return of Quartet.
Awkward comment made during this was the guy, if I had that spin suit, I'd wear it every day. That thing is sweet.
Yeah, he kind of seemed to be just like winging it as like he's watching them play. He's like, also pipes are back. You can go into those. Yeah. And it's competitive.
It was weird.
But
their conference was so like clean cut and like robotic, like a lot of like just the slow pace of that conference. I don't know, man. I wasn't very excited.
Yeah, every time I would skip ahead, the lady who was giving the conference kind of had this look on her face like she was just burdened down.
Yeah. She even said, "I don't play games, I sell games." And I was like, "Well, this is obvious."
Yeah.
And they did so much about their NPD numbers and the, basically we're crushing everyone as always. And all I got out of all that was that Nintendo cares about their market share seemingly more than their fan base. I don't know. Like they were like, "Your uncle is gaming," and it's like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah, and that being said, like a lot of the so-called big announcements were kind of skirted to the back there, like they were like, oh, and because our hardcore gamers will complain unless we say stuff,
Exactly. It felt like just throw them a bone, and then we'll get back to making piles of cash.
Yeah, they have the second Super Mario Galaxy,
which is a big deal. Yeah,
Super Mario Galaxy 1 was great. Super Mario Galaxy 2 looks like 1 but with Yoshi.
Yeah, and, that was the thing. At the very end, Yoshi appears, and from what I heard from people in the crowd, like there was legitimately barely any applause at this entire conference, which I think is fitting, and we'll get into more about applause when we get to Sony.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think this did anything to satiate that entire crowd, And I mean, like, yes, they're making money with police officers playing the DS, which they showed a slide of, but like, what about the fans? Anyway, the other big game was Metroid. And this is the most Japanese name ever, Metroid Other M, which is being developed by Team Ninja of all people, and that I know got a lot of people kind of pumped at the very end of an otherwise boring conference.
Yeah, and again, return to form, 2.5D.
Yeah, so I mentioned applause during Sony's conference. The first real legitimate applause came during the Uncharted 2 demo, which for my money is the best looking game at E3. Like what I've seen so far, I don't have a PS3. I don't need to say this, but that game looked amazing.
Pretty tasty, yeah.
Yeah, Nolan North, the voice of the Prince in Prince of Persia. I'm down for anything he does, and he lent his great lines to this. It was basically him and a girl trying to escape this like collapsing structure while a helicopter shot at them. It looked so like legit and good, but the only question I had was like, what is being scripted, and what is being like played.
Yeah, just in terms of scale, it was huge. They definitely tore a page from Assassin's Creed in getting this to work, but it's cool to see like the gameplay of Uncharted combined with that sort of scale just makes it exciting. And on that note, they also showed Assassin's Creed 2.
Yes.
Showed some hang gliding. Yes.
I love when they said Ezio's friend, Leonardo da Vinci. And I was like, oh, that's convenient.
Good to be friends with famous people.
But talk about that. What did you think of that? The flying contraption.
I remember several years back somebody saying, well, where we really need games to get is where you can fly all around and then you see a building and you head towards it and you land there and you go into the building seamlessly with no load time. And
GamePro 1993.
Yeah, exactly. As I'm watching it, I think to myself, wow, we've arrived. Like, this is going on. Now, it happened very subtly. Like, obviously Grand Theft Auto and stuff has sort of done that. But this was like the level of detail and things like that really just brought me back to that.
Yeah, again, I'm wondering about how scripted it is, because that little segment felt like kind of like a Pilot Wings minigame. Like, anywhere that there's fire in the level, it will boost you up in the air, which is kind of cool if you think about it. Like, the heat makes him rise up. So you had to kind of go towards torches and flames. But when he does, like, finally land and then he does some more assassinations, he killed 2 guys at a time with the wrist blades. And I thought, okay, how often would it be that I saw 2 guys standing right next to each other that I had to assassinate both of them? You know what I mean? It looked cool, but it's like felt a little scripted.
Yeah. And talking about scripted and applause, I get this feeling watching that a lot of that applause was forced. Like, I feel like Sony had people planted in the audience to applaud. And the big tip-off for me was the raucous applause whenever the guy announced that PSP was getting Hannah Montana.
You know what? I actually thought that was just a bunch of tired journalists letting out steam.
Well,
like, that's what it felt like to me. Because there was like, yeah! when he said a lilac-colored PlayStation Portable with Hannah Montana. It was like, yeah, finally! I was like, if I was there with my friends, I probably would have done the same thing.
Definitely the giant bomb guys would do that. Other game journalists, I don't know that they would be be that crazy about it. They're just there scribbling or live blogging or things like that. So
yeah, it was weird. So let's get into some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
What did you think when he said, "I'm gonna show you the first footage of Final Fantasy 14"?
Well, by then I already knew that it had been announced and that it was MMO. So I wasn't too excited. I was like, I had to do the math first because it was like XIV. Is that right? Okay, yeah.
It's the Roman numeral.
Exciting stuff, but I'm like 13 isn't even out, and it doesn't even like. It's supposed to have all these spin-off games already planned. So I was like, it stinks a little bit of Final Fantasy 11, but we'll give them a chance to prove themselves there.
Dude, when he said that, it was like, what? We just like fell out of the future. He's like, and I've also brought the President of the United States from 2020. It was something like that. It was like, I'm proud to show you Final Fantasy 14 and 15 as well. Or
yeah, exactly.
People actually laughed in the audience, and he even smiled, and he was like, yeah, it's true. I'm going to show it to you.
Also, yeah, they revealed Final Fantasy 7 is now available on the PlayStation Network.
Yeah, very cool news.
The original piece. So, hey, there's that.
I do want to say that the title for Project Eco was officially announced, which is The Last Guardian. What'd you think?
Blown away. I mean, like, I want to play this game, partly because I trust these guys in Ico. Like, it looks bizarre. You're not quite sure how you're going to play it, but it just this idea of befriending this sort of luck dragon, and going on adventures and just, hiding him from the authorities and stuff. That's what growing up in the 80s was all about.
Exactly. It looks cute, but it's huge and it's kind of like ominous and oh man, and I don't own a PS3. That's the thing. But this game and Uncharted 2, both just they have to go on my wish list. Which is steadily growing into about a 20-game list for good PS3 exclusives. So on that note, why don't we close out with the last game from Sony and possibly one of the biggest, Kojima's Sony project. He announced is the actual sequel to Metal Gear on PSP.
To me, I'm looking at this. This is a sequel maybe to Metal Gear 3, which was actually a prequel. So this is a sequel to a prequel. So
yeah, it takes place in the 70s. There are 4 Solid Snakes being shown in the video. It's crazy as Kojima ever is. The video had 8 finales. It never ended.
I honestly have to admit that I haven't seen much of this.
Well, the guy mentions, and this is the thing that bothered me, the guy said, "We've been going through Metal Gear withdrawal ever since last year." And I'm like, no. Like an emphatic no. We have not. Like there was a great Metal Gear game last year. It would be really sweet if there was a long pause if he's going to make another one. But they're just pounding us with Metal Gears. I'm excited that 360 gets one, but this feels like warmed up leftovers or something. Like, yeah, keep feeding him Metal Gear. Like, this man is too creative for that. I ranted on this before, but
yeah, I agree. Out of this whole conference, the most exciting thing for Kojima was that he was doing Castlevania.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so let's get into hardware. We don't have a whole lot of time, but we want to do this
proper.
Let's quickly go through some of the smaller announcements. PSP Go was announced by Sony. That's a UMD-less Wi-Fi enabled PSP.
Yeah.
Comes out in October.
Yeah.
It's smaller, it's lighter. What'd you think? Just real quick.
Well, I think the fact that we're grazing over it kind of shows a lot. Like, yeah, it's a smaller PSP. It flips out. But you know what? It's still PSP. I don't care if it is Wi-Fi and you can download games now instead of using the already terrible UMD. It's like one analog stick, still just one, when they desperately need 2. Like, if I were at the conference, I would throw a shoe at the man and be like, "Where's the second stick already?"
Yeah. Oh, dude. Okay, so then Nintendo announced the Vitality sensor, which boggles everyone's mind. Your quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a way for the game to know more about what's going on with you, but I really feel like it's more of a just they needed something to announce. Hardware related.
Yeah.
Wii Fit is popular, so this was probably a thing for Wii Fit at first, where they were like, well, we need a way to measure people's pulses.
Yeah, it clips onto your finger like a lie detector and just measures your heart rate, and that's like literally all they said. No software was shown for it. Yeah.
You could get some degree of emotional feedback from that, But I think as they showed, like, there were better solutions for that kind of thing at the other conferences. So
Yeah.
it was so disappointing because the lady starts off the conference as like, we have the next leap forward and also kind of the little guy. And she went through like Mario and things. And then she says, is that supposed to be the leap forward? A little pulse detector? Like,
it's weird, man.
I know
we're plastic guitars with things strapped to our fingers measuring our heart rates. It's gonna be a weird future.
I know we've been naysayers of Nintendo before, and they've proven us wrong time and time again. But I don't see how this could possibly ever. I mean, I want to go on record with this. I don't see how this could possibly be a good next step for games. So if I'm proven wrong, cover me in tar and feathers.
All right, it's public record now. And then real quick, Microsoft is going to be integrating Zune's video catalog into the 360. And here's the thing that killed me about that. 1080p, this is the promise, 1080p high-def video, instant streaming this fall. Huh?
Well, Netflix did it, or does 720p at least for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, do they do it? Because I can't do it.
If you have a fast enough internet connection, you can. Now, here's a big distinction to make. Just because the image is 1080p doesn't mean it's as good quality as having a disc, having Blu-ray or something like that, because there's compression going on. I have to see this to believe it. I was very excited to see that Netflix is going to have more on-demand options. And speaking of on-demand...
Yes, drum roll for this next one, because, dude, mark this day. That's pathetic.
I tried to find a surface to drum on. I'm holding a microphone here.
Whatever, just go.
Retail Xbox 360 games will be available on demand to download to your hard drive.
Now, people might say, who cares? But I want to step in and say, mark this day. Because Valve has done this on the PC with Steam for a while now, but console games are going to be going digital download of full-blown games. And to me, that is the only way they're going to be played in the future. I mean, Bill Gates has already said as much. Expect this format, Blu-ray, to be the last format. Start kissing your discs goodbye, because really, I'm telling you, if by the point that I'm able to just download on day and date of release to my console, granted we'll need bigger hard drives, but I'm sure that's coming too. Yes, I mean, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, great stuff. The license maintains, despite if your system crashes or you move to a different system or anything, you can still call up your game, re-download it, which is great because in the future, it'll be nice to not have to lug your library around. You just go online and with whatever Xbox 1080i XYZ, you're using it, and it's like, hey, here's all my games all ready to go, and I can just play them that way.
Yeah, and the system can be smaller probably because there's no disk drive anymore. There's no considerations about that. Again, this has been just an evolution I've expected for a long time. Great to see it finally happening. So with that out of the way, let's get to the controller battle. You are a controller maniac. I know that. We've said as much before. So let's start with Project Natal. For Microsoft.
It is a sensor bar at the bottom of your screen, but its job is to detect everything going on in the room, especially with you. And that way, you can use yourself as a controller for the game.
Right, you are the controller, is what they kept saying. And so really this is, Spielberg said, it's not reinventing the wheel, it's taking the wheel away. It's getting rid of the wheel.
Right.
Talk about what you thought of the demo, because, I mean, that's amazing sounding.
Right. Well, the demos were kind of cool. I like this. This definitely had the most fully fleshed out stuff between the two, Sony and Microsoft, because there was actually like applications, and you could see what was neat was rather than like iToy where it's like a video of yourself and you're kind of waving around, you saw a 3D representation of your avatar, which is controlled by your body in that space, so you knew what you were moving or what you were interacting with and how you were interacting with it. So that was awesome. They show physics are still possible. They did this cool painting thing.
It sounds good. I do have to say there was an awkward moment, again, and I know you mentioned this too, when the guy said, check me out. Have you ever wondered what the bottom of your avatar's shoe looks like? Well, bam! And he raised his leg, and his avatar went into like a twisted, like hideous contortion. Kind of a bad moment for the demo.
It was having trouble picking him up, and definitely the inverse kinematics or ragdoll physics that were going on there just weren't having it. So that was kind of funny, and definitely shows that this has some ways to go.
Right, it's early.
I don't expect it to hit even the Xbox 360. If Microsoft wants to be smart about this, they should release it along with the next system. It should be 1-to-1 install base ratio, so that you always have it, so that developers don't have to worry about if a person has it or not. And that being said, the most impressive tech demo, I think maybe even at the show, was Milo. I think Peter Molyneux came out with his wizardry and big promises.
Yeah, this was a piece of software that Peter Molyneux, who made Fable, created, or his team at Lionhead created for the Project Natal. And because the thing recognizes your face and your voice and your body, it's basically you interacting with a little boy named Milo.
Right. And Peter Molyneux went a step beyond like trying to use your body as a controller, which can get exhausting, and instead use the sensor bar to detect emotion from the player. How are you cocking your head? How are you smiling or looking? That's one thing that I'm actually kind of more excited about, rather than like standing up and jiggling in the middle of my room, would be the emotional feedback, the emotion controller that this provides, where, you know, I've always said, like, playing Resident Evil, and it really tells, like, how scared you are.
Right. Yeah, like I said, this was a star-studded thing, and Spielberg came out and talked about this, and obviously he sees the potential for emotional experiences on, you know, this being kind of like planting the flag for, like, something really big, and I can see that, how it could be. I mean, it's hard to tell with what we're looking at right here, and I don't know if I would want it as my only controller, because, dude, I come home from work, and I want to plant my butt on the couch. Like, I don't want to stand and wave around. But for certain types of games, you know, like, you know, detective type games where you're talking to suspects or whatever, that could be so cool. I know the one demo, the guy said that Milo could see that he was wearing a blue shirt.
Yeah.
So he said, "Oh, nice blue shirt."
And he was just like, "Thanks." And without even thinking about it, he's like, "Wow, he recognized the color of my shirt."
Right.
Put this thing in the hands of Hideo Kojima. Right. You know, and just like the game can see you, and all of a sudden Psycho Mantis is 10 times more scary.
Yeah, there was a weird like lifestyle footage, a video that they showed where like there was a whole family on the couch, and that I don't know how this thing is going to concentrate on, because Dad was like standing up to like push his arms forward, which was doing like a tire tightening thing on the NASCAR, and then like the sister was driving it, but she was just one of 4 people on the couch, and she was waving her arms in front of, and I'm thinking, how does this thing know that Dad is pushing his arms out to do, like, how does it
has
know
facial
that?
Recognition. Like, that's the cool
right,
thing.
That's
like,
right. Yeah.
You walk in front of it, and it's like, hey, you're back. You know, it knows who you are. It pulls your avatar up.
Okay, and now I was really excited about this, and then Sony dropped their thing, which is an engineering prototype. They admitted as much. They even had engineers come out.
Obviously engineers. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and it's a motion controller with a lighted ball on the top. At least that's how it looks now, but it's going to change, they said. And supposedly it's like a 2-part controller where you're holding 2 things like a Wiimote. And what did you think of this unnamed prototype from Sony?
It was definitely the most impressive in terms of what the technology could do. It was definitely the most accurate. Whereas the guy in the Microsoft thing was splashing paint on a canvas and sort of making something that looked like a painting, this guy, he takes the controller and writes like his name and the other guy's name and draws arrows. And it's a combination of the two. It's iToy plus this Wiimote sort of thing with the glowing ball on the end.
When he grabbed it, and he started moving it in the air, and they showed a 1-to-1 on the screen version of the controller moving. Yeah. It was like exact.
Right.
And that's where I got really excited, because when you're playing a game, you want very precise control. And the problem with the Natal thing is it still looks a little janky. Whenever you're moving, it's like kind of close, but not perfect. Mm-hmm. But this thing is dead on accurate to what you're doing, and especially the bow and arrow demo.
Yeah, let's talk about like that. I mean, you have 2 motion controllers in either hand, and so he's literally pulling the bow back. I don't know how many times I've rolled my eyes at Nintendo when they have the nunchuck, and the guy's like, when I pull the trigger, and then
he pulls back, but the system doesn't know that the nunchuck is back.
Nor does it care, you know? But in this case, the guy, he pulls back, and it literally creates the tension. Again, the thing that went so awry at Microsoft, and just like that wha-bam and twisted guy, in this, when he took his sword and edged up the head of like this skeleton, and then slashed it across the place. Like that showed that he had enough control over it to do very precise moves.
I'm so excited about that. And again, I didn't expect Sony to wow me so much this conference, but they really did, because if I'm going to have a new controller type, I want it to provide a greater degree of control than the old type, right? I mean, I don't want it to be worse and like sloppier. And the thing is, he took his sword and he put it between the ribs, it looked like, of the skeleton, and went tickle, 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 like that, and shook the sword up and down. Mm-hmm. And that's something right now that you couldn't do in a game, right? Like, you couldn't use the analog sticks to that level.
Yeah.
But he totally like turned his arms and went tickle, 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 and then like bashed the thing in the head. And I thought, dude, that's like putting your own stank on the game, putting your own spin on it.
In the end, though, nothing is to stop Microsoft from incorporating a controller thing like that, though.
Sure.
And I think if you had Natal plus these things, now all of a sudden it's not just the control of the sword and the shield, but also your body.
Yeah, so winner in the end is both.
Yeah, winner in the end would be the combination of the two. We want both.
That's awesome. Well, we are out of time, but thank you, everybody, for listening. If you grew up geek like us and you'd like to send us some comments, please do so. Our website is growing-up-geek.com, and you can always follow Rob on Twitter throughout the week at twitter.com/GUGRob. I think that's going to do it. My name is Brad.
The hot boys.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah.